Needless to say, if it is institution, if it is perpetual, it's a perpetuity-like institution. It's circular materials. Okay, so that its conspiracy is something which is not short-term and it's not a flash of mind. That okay, I feel people just have the idea that, and the idea cross the mind that they are advocating to overthrow this institution, this government today, and the other day, after discussion in McDonald's on fast food restaurant, okay, we are going to overthrow it tomorrow. It's ridiculous. It's ridiculous. The lay charge on such kind of next to leisure activities. In Code 2386 is about registering certain institutions, certain organizations. You register a body. This body must be engaged in military activities. Do you know what military activity means? It involves ammunition, it involves heavy military force, every armed force, that you have machine gun, you have laser gun, not the laser gun that you watch the star. It's a laser gun that you can kill, that can destroy objects, that can destroy a lot of things, destroy a building, to tear down a building. And those activities, we have tanks, we have submarines, perhaps there are bombs, perhaps nuclear weapons. You can imagine the scale, which is big enough to be military, big enough to turn against the Liberation Army garrisoning in Hong Kong. And just a few guys on the street that trigger your sentiment that you feel like they are engaging themselves in military activities. That's ridiculous. And a military activity under foreign control. So you can't just prosecute a few guys a day or two, and you have evidence to believe and the assurance that they're probably under foreign control and doing military activity. That's really idiotic. If you prosecute it and triggering the national security law, is absolutely an abuse of power. If you did so, you're slowing down. You can see that it must involve military weapons, so military maneuvers. It must be well trained, just like soldiers that you marching across the street, that you feel threatened enough that you charge them under national security law. When it involves the word national, it must be a big scale as a nation, not just a few guys who you feel like you have feelings that they are subverting a country. For Code 2387, you can see the word armed forces generally. So activities that can affect armed force, it must be armed yourself. You have a very having a very wealthy bank of ammunitions, that you have the machine guns and fire, and the anti-riot police fell down in number, not just a few, not just one or two anti-riot police be injured by a table knife. That's really crazy if you call for national security. So it's a crime that causes insubordination among military members. So it must cause some turmoil to the military members, some confusions and commotion in military members. So imagine can the protester on the street strong enough to post that in that scale? So you're distributing materials urging disloyalty to U.S. military. So you're attacking the anti-riot police, and that will give rise to disloyalty to the Communist Party Liberation Army. So as a result, that protester will be penalized for 10 years imprisonment and a fine. Does it beyond all sketch of imagination that national security law can be manipulated at that disgusting way? In 2388, activities affecting armed force during war, it must be in a state of war. You know what war means. You have to make declaration. You have to make ultimatum to your opponents or enemies that if you don't surrender, I will go to hit you, not with my fists, not with table knives. I'm going to destroy you with machine guns and nuclear bombs. That is a activist threatening the national security. For Code 2389, your recruiting service in an organized way against a nation, not against a group of anti-riot police. You're doing it against the whole nations, the Navy, the cavalry, the Air Force, that you call for national security. It is not just an appearance that I field 5 bombs that the protesters drop on the road, causing a lot of unrest and an appearance that pretty much noisy and that are threatening it, rowdy, that you call for anti-riot police, though it's not serious enough to call the national security law at all. So the penalty would never be 5 years, or it's as serious as here, that is like 5 years imprisonment. It might be just a year or probably social order if you just torch a bin or set fire to a lamppost or the railings, or just a pile of rubbish at the side of the road, which can't possibly be as having massive penalty or a penalty as serious as that way. So for Code 2319 is an enlistment to serve against the United States. So it's just like it's the same as recruiting for a organizations or workforce that kind of powerful enough against the army or the soldiers. So in conclusion, the Chinese national security law being legislated in Hong Kong just legislated in a way to instigate fear among the demonstrator is next to ridiculous and if not amusing. I just like it's like we just posting facts by you to wielding some heavy weapon in front of you so you won't steal the bread in the shop. I just think it's disgusting. It's like, and the demonstrators are peacefully taking the street, asking just for, as far as I know, universal suffrage or some civilian rights, like they want direct elections because the way that they are electing the chief executive in Hong Kong for the time being is not undergoing a procedures that is doing by the committees or members of a committee that are broadly representative enough for the whole population of over 7 million people. It's like for the time being, they are just unhappy. They are excluded from the political matters, and they believe as more civilians should have been got involved, and unfortunately, the People Congress in 2014 passed legislation to turn down any proposal to engage universal suffrage. So for the time being, the election of chief executive and the legislative councillors are being occupied by those wealthy class and just like the real estate tycoons and very rich people are engaging and occupying the political areas, so that only those who have an influence on the policies Hong Kong governments are formulating, and those policies is applicable to those civilians in Hong Kong who don't have any chance of getting involved, and they have to receive that policy without any chance to complaining. And even if they complain, nobody listens to them. They are just onlookers, and if the policies are very bad, they are the sufferers, and they cannot have the grips of the policy making and the law making. And some people think that citizens should have civil rights to decide their own fate, and there's something that people called the national security law against such kind of idea. And even though it crosses your mind, it is a crime. It's a thought crimes that you only see in the fictions like 1984. And I can't imagine how the future of Hong Kong would be like if it is go on. And even though it's sanctioned China, it's like the political parties are very stubborn and they won't change their mind. They're just as stubborn as in us. I just hate the way that they are governing a country like this. Perhaps the country is very populous, and it is the only way to have hardline attitude against the people, so to make it stable. But I think the history revealed if such kind of political ideologies will be right or not, and it is too much for me to comment on that. Hope everything will be doing fine.